Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
8:07 now on this final hour of our weekly morning broadcast. It's O'Connor and Company, this 15th day of August. You're doing that thing, Patrice Onwuka, with your head as you...
Oh, bobbing it to the music?
Yeah, but you bob it like side to side without moving your torso. Just the head moves.
It must be a black thing. I don't know.
Just because C.J. Pearson is here, you guys are going to gang up on me now. Oh, it's a black thing. It's a black thing. You know what?
We're not like those types of people. We've been uninvited to the picnic, so.
Well, what I like about C.J. Pearson, Patrice, is that he created his own picnic. And he's famous for setting up some pretty awesome parties that are so bad that they trigger New Yorkers into trying to lie and say that it's some sort of white Klansman meeting. C.J. Pearson joins us now. C.J., good man. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me, Larry. Great to meet you, Patrice.
I want to give everybody an update on this because it was New York Magazine, I want to say, or Vanity Fair. I can't remember now.
Yes, it was the New Yorker. Both failing publications, though. They came to this event that we had, during inauguration, and honestly, it was quite interesting. We had basically 500 young people who were super excited about the fact that President Trump had won the election. Of course, we saw that reflected in the election results, where President Trump, saw a 20-point swing in support among voters 18 to 30, among, the young demographic. And they were just having a good time. But of course, in the eyes of the left, Republicans smiling, having a good time, and being normal is the gravest sin of all. And so they wrote this article saying that it was an exclusively, almost all-white party, which is ironic because, of course, I looked in the mirror today. I am black, still am black, and the only person I'm not black in the eyes of is probably Joe Biden. Despite that,
but it was you. But let's just be clear: it was your party. You were the mastermind behind this, and I'm pretty sure the invitations didn't say, whites only or anything.
Yeah, exactly that. And, we also had Soulja Boy performing, who was a black man. We had Congressman Wesley Hunt there, who is a black man. We had, Gervonta Davis, who's the a heavyweight champion, who is a black man. But ironically enough, and you'll love this, is that for 4th of July, because they accused me of throwing an all-white party, I actually did throw an all-white party. Now, there were still black people there. I just made everyone wear all white, and it was a good time.
That's beautiful. And just to remind everyone, New York Magazine took a cover photo. By the way, it's a stunning photo. You look at this picture, it's like, okay, I want to be at that party with those people. They called it the Cruel Kids Table, but deceptively, they literally, you look at the original photograph they took, and they deliberately cropped out black people who were in the image, so it appeared as though it was just white people. That's how deceptive this was.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. But, again, it goes to show why so many people have lost faith in the institutional media. And you're exactly right in your intro. What they intended to do was to portray this party as some KKK kumbaya pizza party, and it was not that. And so, God forbid a young man and his friends and, just enjoy the fact that we're inaugurating a president who is bringing in a new golden age to this country, and God bless him for it.
Well, one quick follow-up here. I'd love that you're the national co-chair of the RNC's Youth Advisory Council. That means you're coming into D.C. quite a bit, and that brings us to your op-ed that you've recently written about the D.C. crime issue. Everyone's, screaming about Trump and fascism and authoritarianism and the troops in the streets. But it's funny, the left always wants to talk about the root of an issue and the root of a problem. And I feel like your op-ed at Fox News really does focus on the root of the problem. What do you think that is, in your opinion?
I think it's the culture of the black community, unfortunately. It's the fatherless epidemic that we're seeing within my community that I think that we really need to be serious about and tackle. Because simply, at the end of the day, the president's authorization or federal takeover of MPD can only last for 30 days unless it's renewed by Congress. And so I think we really have to think about, why is this happening? Why are, young black men in this city glorifying drug dealers and not fathers? Why are they, selling dope and not actually becoming, legitimate entrepreneurs, all of those things. And until we, I think, have those tough conversations as a community and as a country, we actually won't see this problem really actually solve itself at all. And so, and I think, at the end of the day, I don't place that onus upon the federal government, though. The Black community will only improve if we want to improve. Black lives have to matter to us before they matter to anyone else if any of these things are actually going to change.
CJ, that's such a good point because I just happened to be scrolling through my feed this morning and saw King Randall. He's a young black guy out of Georgia. He said, you know what? I want to do better for the boys around me. He started a preparatory school in his house, and he took in young men, foster cared for them, taught them life skills, taught them trades. Now he's opened up a physical school, and he said to Roland Martin, one of those black elites, let's do for self. And I think that's indicative of how the black community used to operate before the 1950s, where the black community did for self. They had banks, they had schools, they had educational institutions, they had business. But we have seen now the left elites say, no, it's the government's role. What do you see as the right way for us to move, to break through that narrative and really start to reinvest? If you're a white person, how can you reinvest in these kinds of efforts to actually help the black community build itself up and do for self?
I'm very familiar with King Randall's work, being from Georgia as well. And I think his Booker T. Washington approach to all of this is actually very real. And unfortunately, is something that fell out of vogue for a long time, but thankfully is resurging, thankfully to the work that he's doing. And to his point, teaching young black men trades, automotive skills, electricity skills, all those things. Because with this AI race, a lot of jobs, of course, are going to go away. But what's not going to go away? Electricians, welders, plumbers, all those things. ChatGPT can't do that. Trust me, I've tried. And so when you look at it, I think that's a great first step. But also too, I think it's like creating a culture of victorhood and not victimhood is a big part of this. I think that, of course, what we saw, under, LBJ, creating this culture of reliance upon the government, where the government replaced fathers in the home and all these things, has proven to be truly detrimental to the black community. And so what I think about, what is the role of white folks and helping, bring about this culture of self-reliance, in the black community, I think, create opportunities, obviously, for black folks to create businesses and all of these things. But don't accept the excuses. I think for a long time, it's like, the left has made this mistake. They just kind of treat black people like children, which is actually more racist and bigoted than anything a Klansman ever did, right? So it's crazy.
We've got more questions for you, CJ. So if you don't mind sticking around, I think this is great stuff, and I love the fact that you're part of the RNC's youth movement too. So we'll continue with CJ Pearson in a moment. First, though, it's 8:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
CJ Pearson continues with us now. He's being described as a Gen Z influencer activist. He's the national co-chair of the RNC Youth Advisory Council, and he's recently written a column at Fox News about the problem with fatherlessness right now for African-American boys in D.C. and really around the country. This is a vicious cycle, isn't it? Because you've got policies that are set up by Democrats. You point to the Lyndon Johnson administration setting up policies that sort of enable and encourage women, black women, urban women, to be single mothers. They got benefits only if there wasn't a man in the home, right? Which sort of breaks down the family unit, which anybody who observes civilization and values will tell you the family unit is the building block of any great society. So you had these policies that were under the guise of we want to help people, but instead ended up harming them even further. And then you've now got the current Democrat Party, which they know where their power base is. Black women in America are the single largest, most powerful and influential voting bloc for the Democrats. And so it almost behooves them to keep these black women sort of, suspicious of black men and dependent on the government instead of actually building a family. But it's black men now in the last election cycle, CJ, black men like yourself, who are looking in other directions. They see the problems. How does that trend continue? And what do Republicans need to do to actually bolster those men who have made this brave choice to sort of go independent and say, you know what, let's give Republicans a shot?
Yeah, I think Larry, you're spot on about that. When I go to black churches and I go to black barbershops, I often hear, there are folks who are finally beginning to ask the question, what have Democrats done for us lately? And whenever they actually do that introspection, they ask themselves that, they come up short every single time. What have they done for our communities? What, they brought in crime? Where are the jobs? They're not there, at least under Biden. And under President Trump, they've seen, actually things come back to where they were. He truly is not just making America great again, but he's making the black community great again. And ironically enough, I saw, of course, on MSNBC where Simone Sanders was asked whether or not she feels safe with more cops in D.C. And she said, of course not. I'm a black woman. But what's crazy about that and so interesting is that actually the people that are disproportionately harmed by violent crime in inner cities are going to be black people, right? It's really going to be black kids shooting black kids and, black women, of course, being beaten and all these things. And here's the reality. It's just like that, like this is the most pro-black thing that President Trump probably could have done and probably will do his administration, and it's because of the fact that not only is he saving our capital city, which is important. If America is going to be a shining city on a hill, our capital city ought to be too. But also, too, he is single-handedly saving black lives by making D.C. enforce the law again, which shouldn't be a radical position to take. And I guarantee you, at lay diplomat, I guarantee you the Democrats are saying, thank God for Donald Trump. He is finally making lay diplomats safe again. I'm sure they're excited about it.
Oh, of course. Going to your op-ed in Fox News, you said part of the problem when you look at, or the solution is really putting some accountability on and responsibility on men to step up and really parent their children. And I do see, and do you see in younger generations, particularly of black men who've grown up in the household where it was just the single mom struggling, this idea, well, I don't want that for my kids. I'm going to try and be a part of their life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're marrying the women they're having children with, or that they are, or they're going to be in one household and have kids in one household, but they're willing to kind of spread their time. Is that helping, CJ? I mean, is a partial dad better than a full dad or not?
Well, I think the ideal, situation is a full dad, right? A full-time father in the home. And we've seen that in multiple studies and statistics. And what's interesting is that this is actually irrespective of race. Thomas Sowell wrote about it in his book, Basic Economics, where it's like you study, two-parent households compared to single-parent households across races. Even a two-parent black household is better than a single-parent white household. It's just true. And so I think when you look at that fact, number one, I think, the onus is, of course, on men. They have an obligation and responsibility, but also, too, this baby mama culture has to end as well, right? I think black women need to be more selective about who they decide to procreate with and whether or not this is someone that's fit to raise their child. And I think there's some red flags that a lot of folks ignore when they make that decision. And I think that largely leads to the situation that they end up finding themselves in. And so I think it's important for black men to step up to lead the family that they've been blessed with. And to do that, I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing will rectify themselves.
50% of D.C. children are living in single-parent homes. 71% of high school dropouts are from fatherless homes. It doesn't take a genius, although, CJ, I think you are kind of borderline genius to sort of articulate things in the way that you do that are very clear and very concise and very, because these are complex social issues, but you make it very, human and very sort of obvious to figure out. That's why probably you are only invited on a couple of media outlets, sadly. But do you call D.C. home now, or New York? Where is home for you?
Yeah. So I'm back and forth between here and Georgia, but I spent a lot of time in the Navy Yard neighborhood, and so I've kind of been in the epicenter of a lot of this, violent crime outbreak. And it's like, you'll see, kids running around, carjacking people, shooting fireworks off in the park here in Navy Yard. And it truly is something that, should never have been allowed to take place to begin with. And I think, of course, there was just this cultural responsibility that was truly missing. But I think, and I'll tell you this, is that it's 72 hours since the president made his decisive action. I have not seen any of that this week. And I think it's in large part because, people realize there's a new sheriff in town. That sheriff is Donald Trump and Jeanine Pirro, and neither of them are playing around. And so it's been great to see.
All right. Any interest in running for local office?
Not here, but I'm eager to help wherever I can.
We need you here. This is where we need. This is where you can help. You're already helping. Let's go.
I appreciate it.
All right, fine. I'm not going to talk him into a run quite yet. Ward 7 could use you, young man. All right. Thank you. Great meeting. Actually, we met at the congressional baseball game a couple of months ago. Great hanging out with you. You were there for Hillsdale College, as I was, and it's real good to see you again. And don't be a stranger. We want to have you on as often as possible.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
That is CJ Pearson. Follow him all over social media. He posts lots of videos, lots of good stuff, and he's an up-and-comer. It is 8:23.